Hello, welcome back to my garage podcast. This episode is supposed to be posted on Friday, but on Friday I don't know what was happening. I just didn't want to do anything. So these past 2 days, actually, that's a lie. On Sunday, I think when I was finishing up most of the work. Um, Next week I'm gonna try to get it on Friday. I'm gonna try to switch it to Friday because I feel like that would be better for me. I tried to do it on Friday this week, but because last week I was thinking that it would be better to post it on Monday, it it kind of messed up my schedule. So I literally only had like 4 days versus having like a whole week to do it. And I find that uh, it was just I couldn't do it. I was able to get some work done, but this week I had an exam, and no, actually no, I didn't have an exam. Change that. Um, I'm just really bad at managing my time, but I just had an essay I had to do. Um, I don't really like essays because I find that it's just a long thing, and I don't really find enjoyment in it. I was trying to push through it because I was working on it like every day, but afterwards, like I just didn't want to read and try to do research for this because I was doing research for another thing, and then um, it felt like more like it didn't feel right, or I just felt like really tired because it was like I just correlated it with the research I did for this because it's very similar. It was for a history class. I had to write a like an essay and just like talking about the social, political, and economic state um, that the U.S. was in, and the period that I had to do it was in the 50s. And I found that that correlates to what I'm talking about now and kind of gives some background into why we are where we are now and how we're shifting more towards a capitalistic society, or we've been shifting deeper and deeper into a capitalistic society. Um, so that kind of threw me off. Um, like now I have to work on next week. I'm gonna have to work on some college stuff, so I can transfer. Uh, Deciding which school I wanna choose. Also, I had to do the UCLA waitlist, or uh, finish my letter of continued interest for UCLA, and that was due this week on Friday. So after I finished writing my um, so the days I had to work on that essay for my history class, I would later have to go and work on my UCLA thing and my UCLA letter of continued interest. And so that took a lot more effort out of me in writing. But I pushed through it and I finished it and submitted it on the last day on Friday. So now, after June 1st, I'll learn whether or not I got accepted or not to UCLA if they're going to reconsider me. So right now it's looking for school. It's looking like I'm going to go to either Santa Barbara or San Luis Obispo. For San Luis Obispo, because I didn't finish all the requirements as a transfer, I'm going to have to do 2 classes over the summer, and then I also have to plead my case as to why I should be let into San Luis Obispo. And it'll probably go along the same lines of what I wrote for my UCLA thing. I have 15 days now, probably like 10 or something. So I have to start working on that and just kind of balance it. Uh, I don't know. I just kind of bad at balancing time, but uh, after this all said and done, uh, I'll just be getting ready to transfer to school and finishing classes if I decide to go to San Luis Obispo, and then if I choose Santa Barbara, then I'll just have a free summer. I think over summer I might not post. I'll probably like post here and there, but mainly I plan to get a job over the summer because school's expensive, and my family, realistically, they can't like support me. They'll be able to help me with like paying for my classes, but other than that, like getting groceries and things like that, like personal expenses, I don't really think that there'll be much help for that. So I planning to get a job, and then with the money I already have from FAFSA and all these other things, I'll uh, use it on like groceries and food, so I don't have to work during the school year. And then next school year, I'll work towards getting an internship over the summer, so I can start getting my process done, so I can uh, get a job after college. Because things happen really fast, and I'm gonna have to do all these things and just kind of suck it up, even though I don't really want to. Because I really just like prefer doing math. I didn't. I ended up switching away from being and I originally was an engineer major, but it was just too many requirements to transfer, and I wanted to get away from home as soon as possible because I kind of saw it as a big task, and I didn't really find it worth it for me. So that's why I switched to business, and at the end of the day, even when I was an electrical engineer, my whole goal was just to own my own business one day, because that's really what I hope to do with all this with all of the things I'm doing right now. So I'm just gonna have to work towards my next goal of getting my MBA or whatever I decide, if I stick with economics or switch to an accounting major, which I've been considering because I think that'd be better for investment banking. But I also do like the theoretical approach of being an economist or having an economics degree, because if there's a chance that I want to be a Fed chair or a federal board member, which I find very interesting, that would help me a lot. But also that would be a lot of work, and I don't know, it seems like a big thing, but I just want to work towards that right now. Because decisions that the U.S. or the Federal Reserve, um, I I find that really powerful, and how I can impact everybody, and hopefully I would like to say I would impact everybody in a good way, but I can't really make everybody happy. Um, but speaking of the Fed chair, uh, on May 12th, 2026, the Senate officially voted for Kevin Warsh to become a Federal Reserve governor. I'll get later into the background information about Warsh, but I just we'll talk about him becoming the next Fed chair and what that means. Uh, on May 12th, when I was writing this was to become a Fed chair. Once you get voted in by the Senate, it's the first of the two-step process for him to officially become the Fed chair. The next step would be for him to be voted on by the current board to become the Fed chair. Jerome Powell's term as the Fed chair is set to end on May 15th, and it's over, and but it isn't, um, he is no, his term as a federal board member doesn't end till 2028, so he'll have 4 years as a board member, just to stay along, and I think he might stay all of those 4 years just to stay along with Warsh, because every 4 years, that is when the Fed chair um, switches, and they have to go through that whole process of going through Congress and all these other things to switch out the Fed chair. And the voting for Warsh to be the Fed chair was on May 13th. And the question that rose to me during this time is why this was all happening. I previously talked about Powell and Trump not having the best relationship, and this is a big part of why Powell will no longer be the Fed chair. To be the Fed chair, even if you already served a term, the president must nominate you to be a Fed chair, and so that's why Trump's and Powell's relationship is very important. And if Trump doesn't like him, which he has clearly stated that he doesn't like him, it shows why Powell is no longer the Fed chair, or why he has no longer been nominated, and it's been switched to Warsh. As well, once you become a board, kind of looks nasty. Looks like I'm picking my boogers, but my nose itches. As well, once a board member once you become a board member, you can't get removed for political reasons or opinions. So that is why Powell will stay on to finish out his term, and why, if it was possible, Trump has not started the process to kick him out. Terms for the governor or board members are 14 years long, and also they get nominated by the president and have to go through a similar process as the Fed chair to become a board member. And additionally, the process for getting a board member fired is a lengthy process, and that's why Powell is staying on. And another idea that popped into my head is what will happen if Warsh is not voted in as the Fed chair. And clearly we know this is not the case because Warsh is now the Fed chair. The White House believes that this will not happen and believes that this won't be the case. But if this is going to happen, Powell stated that he will stay on as the Fed chair member. So, oh my God, my neck. Sorry. So if Warsh wasn't the chair and things went sour, Powell would have stayed on as the chair. And going back to the voting in the Senate on Warsh, on whether or not he should be the federal chair, all Republicans and only one Democrat, John Fetterman, Pennsylvania, voted yes on Warsh. And so it was kind of a split thing, but not really. It was 54 to 45, if I'm remembering. So that goes to show you how many more Republicans are in the House right now, or the Senate or Congress, in the Senate right now on voting. And as well, because the seats are filled, the Federal Board Reserve, it would be really hard to get another member that supports Trump's policy. And that is why I brought up how complicated it is to get fired from the Federal Reserve. So if Warsh wasn't voted in, getting in another board member would be really hard right now, because one, you have to go through that process of getting him fired, and then you have to get another process of voting on it through the Senate, the Congress, and all three forms of governments, and not even just governments, also like other agencies that are affiliated or are part of the government but also independent. And that's why getting Warsh in as the first place was so hard. And I don't really see Trump finding another person to get more of his guys in. And that's the whole reason why I believe that's why Powell was investigated. And it was to get him out just in case, and have a kind of a backup plan in case Warsh wasn't voted on. And getting out Powell, even since Powell and Trump have been clashing, and I think that Trump already knew that Powell would give him some problems in this whole process. And as we know now, he's staying on as a board member for the rest of his term. And his investigation, Powell's, it has been dropped. So nothing ever came of that. Just wasted time, I feel, and just kind of putting Powell under like a scope, like the scope of interrogation, like under a microscope. That's what I meant to say. Just to make him, like, if anything, just make it harder for him. And if any mistake that he made, it would be televised, because there's already a spotlight on him and all the things that he was doing. And as I said previously, Kevin Warsh has been voted to be the Fed chair. I want to look at some of the policies and approach that Warsh is going to be taking as a Fed Reserve chair. Warsh has been previously a Fed board member from 2006 to 2011, and that's 5 years. And from what I'm understanding, he left midway through his term because I think he either left to become a professor at Stanford, which I knew that he was, or mainly for the reason to and oversee companies and accusations, and going back to what he was doing previously. And before becoming a Fed member, he worked with Morgan Stanley Co. and has gotten degrees from MIT and Harvard. And my first question is now, because even though I want to go in this type of field, I know what comes along with the people that are in this field. And my question is, how much will he value the average consumer? Because you can be really smart, like Warsh, and based on the government you are in, or environment you're in, you can completely lack empathy, and he may not consider average consumers when making decisions, and may favor or side with businesses over everything else, or favor and side with Trump. And with Trump nominating him to be the Fed chair, especially with his current track record, he has gone against everything he has stood for in his campaign. And this brings into question, how well will Warsh hold up? And now that I've just said some of his history, what is he going to do moving forward as the Federal Reserve as the Federal Reserve chair? His announcement of becoming the Fed chair, it brings in a lot of pressure on him from the president and the consumers based on the decisions he's going to make. In April, producers' price rose 6% and that's a tool that is to find out wholesale inflation. Basically, it's CPI for businesses, and I kind of went over what CPI is. It's the Consumer Price Index, and just basically how this is probably wrong, but this is a very simplified version. It's just like how much your money is worth, or like how much purchasing power you have, and compared to last year, how with the money you have, what could you buy with it? And showing that Warsh in this rise in the Consumer Price Index shows how Warsh is now in a troubling situation, and that there's going to be a rough road in front of him to balance inflation while trying to lower it in an already unstable market with Trump and his very impulsive decisions. Also, Warsh has been stated that he's going to be willing to accept crypto. Personally, I don't really agree with crypto and the whole crypto community because I find it very unstable, and it brings implications, very wrong implications and harsh implications alongside of it. From even just like the community, I just see the whole crypto community as just kind of a scummy thing. With the amount of rug pulls that have gone alongside these markets, it's really hard to trust them. And especially with investors and the ultra wealthy getting in on the crypto markets, it's another way for them to avoid being taxed and fight it. As well, because of Warsh's decisions or Warsh's announcement, the markets didn't really move with this announcement, and it is speculated that it will need Warsh to actively encourage crypto for markets to rally, or at least to change, not just the crypto market as a whole, but the whole U.S. market and just global market. And for markets to seriously change, his announcement of becoming the Fed chair hasn't really budged markets, but what is speculated to change markets and affect what will be going on further will be his first comments on the markets and what he's willing to accept and reject. And if he is stated to side with the White House and cut interest rates to the rate that Trump wants, the consequences of these actions would be that bonds would suffer and hurt long-term yields. And Warsh would need a stable market, not just for bonds, but also for what the crypto community is hoping. If he wants crypto to succeed, that means that markets will need to be stable. And now, from what I've learned, economists and investors will watch out for the language that Warsh is using when talking about crypto and interest rates, because it may seem that he's dancing around the bush, or beating around the bush, but his use of words, no matter how subtle, will reveal his true intentions and his attitude moving forward as the Fed chair. And it may seem that I'm being harsh towards Warsh and going easy on Powell, even though they are both Republicans and nominated by Trump. But in a time like now, when Trump launched an investigation into Powell just because he was not doing what he wanted, makes me question his judgment. Also, when it comes to both Warsh and Powell being nominated by Trump, I find what makes this different is that Joe Biden, the previous U.S. president, nominated Powell to become president, and I agree with, as far as I know, much with Biden's approach and policies, a lot more than Trump, and not even just compared to Trump, but just in general. And I don't really see much of it or learn much about it. But before I do, I'll get into this next week, but because I want to talk about the long term, or how markets will be affected because of the meeting. But I wanted to give some of my opinions on Trump and Xi Jinping, the leader of China, meeting, and hopefully I actually said that right, and that's actually the right person. But yeah, Xi Jinping, they met. Sorry, see what it was. They met actually not that long ago, on the 14th and the 15th, so that was on Friday. But I find it very crazy that instead of Trump going along with his Justice Cabinet, he went alongside tech CEOs and just big CEOs. And the reason I find that this really hard is because, also get into it, but the whole point of this meeting was to discuss diplomatic reasons, or diplomatic ties that the U.S. and China will have moving forward, because knowing the history of the U.S. and China, it's originally because things like the Cold War, and China being a somewhat communist society, they just clashed, and to increase diplomatic ties, I guess it kind of makes sense, because the U.S. has a whole bunch of these businesses like Apple and Nvidia, and they need to be in these markets. But I just find it very weird, and I just find it crazy that the people that went along with Trump, and this is very telling of where Trump's mind is and where he is when he makes decisions and policies for the U.S. As we know, the U.S. has changed drastically, favoring businesses and the wealthy over workers. I know this is true because in the 50s, when America was just getting out of World War II, America was prospering, and much of the wealth was distributed equally. The U.S. tax system was not like how it is today, with the very wealthy paying no less than 70% of taxes. Now they pay around 43%. And I got this from my class textbook in my history class, and the title of my history book is Give Me Liberty, 7th Seagull edition, volume 2, by Eric Foner, Kathleen DuVal, and Lisa McGirr. And this tax system, it was a progressive federal income tax in which the more money you made, the more you paid in taxes. But it all changed started to change with Ronald Reagan, who favored businesses and introduced his trickle-down economics, which is not explicitly stated, but as we all, it's pretty obvious to see. This is how the U.S. operates now. And trickle-down economics is when the government gives tax breaks, or this may be wrong, but from what I remember and learned, trickle-down economics is when the government gives tax breaks to businesses, and in a perfect world, those extra profits would help increase spending in the company and increase wages for the average person. But this is not the case at all. because people are worse off now, and purchasing power for consumers has not been adjusted, and the U.S. has just been favoring businesses over consumers because that's what makes it money and what keeps the U.S. as a powerhouse. And we can see this now by comparing the average age of buying a house 50 years ago and now. In the early 1970s, the average age to buy a house was 30. Now it's 59. And it's just very sad to see how consumers have just kind of had the back end of decisions made by the government. And as well with these meetings, Trump to hope to have some leverage, hoping that by the time the meeting occurred, the Israel-U.S. Iran war would be over. But as we know, it's still going on, and there's a current ceasefire, or yeah, I'm pretty sure. And as well, in the long run, I think we lost this war, no matter how much we profit from it. The amount of money that has been spent on this war has increased the debt significantly. And as well, it put China in a better place because in this meeting, China is in a better place than they have been in years. And this is mainly because of decisions that Trump has made, which has isolated the U.S. And if things continue, maybe in the next 10 to 20 years, or maybe even sooner, I don't really hope for this to happen, but China might take the seat as the leader of the world if the next president does not repair the decisions and that Trump made. So that's it for this week. I was during this recording I was very tired, or not very tired. I was just like, it's a long ass recording because usually my past recordings have been like 20 minutes or like 24 minutes, but now this one's like, right now it's marked at like 27, and there's a lot of information I was writing. But also next week, I'm not sure if I'll be able to do Friday because I will be going to Santa Barbara to visit the school and just to visit the school and learn about it. I don't know if I'll go to SLO that day. But maybe I will. I don't know, because it's still like an hour and a half away. But in the next recording, I'll tell you guys what happens, and please continue to watch and support, and thank you.